Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to moderate the last panel of today here on Future Stage. My name is Liisa. I'm leading actually healthcare and life sciences sector group at Sorainen Law Office, which is the biggest law firm in the Baltics. And I'm sticking with my handwritten notes. Sorry for that. But we are talking about the AI and data. And with me, it is my pleasure to introduce you, Priit.
Yeah, hi, my name is Priit. My background is in computer science and math, but last 24 years I've been mostly working as a software engineer or building my own companies, and right now we're building a medtech startup, building AI models that detect cancer in human body and help radiologists who diagnose cancer be double as fast.
Thank you. And BJ.
Yeah, PJ Waskovic. I've been working in tech for over 20 years and over 17 years in AI, mostly for the largest brands in the world, but over the last 12 years moving more into startups, including going through Y Combinator and trying to navigate that as well. And I work for Omnifi Foundation, and I'm the chair of that organization focused on privacy technologies. I'm also CTO of a sustainability AI company and board member of several other privacy-focused organizations as well.
So we have 27 minutes and counting, so let's go into the matter. When it comes to the data as a fuel to AI, do you think that do you agree with me that the quality matters more than the quantity?
Yeah, I think quality definitely matters more than quantity. You could have the biggest repository of data in the world, but if it's inaccurate, it doesn't mean anything. You can't use it. So I think it's always accuracy. Even if you have a small data set, it has to be accurate before it has to be large all the time. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I would say both matter, and it depends on the use case. I think we're building AI models that really need to have high-quality data set to build something that can be medically applied. But at the same time, if you would like to build a large language model, then basically only quantity matters. And because we are also developing a kind of a foundational type of model for imaging, then we see that their quantity beats quality. And it depends on the use case, basically.
Well, yeah, but based on your answers, I think the common that you said is that actually you have to have the data, and ultimately it has to serve the purpose. So when it comes to the data, what are those sources where you collect it? Where do you find the correct data, and you can be sure that you can come up with innovative solutions?
So I will put everything in the better medicine context because this is the freshest one. I've been now building this company for 4 years with our team, and our data comes from healthcare system. So we have images that are stored or scans that are stored in a certain database. So this is where it comes from, and you curate the data, and I think we will get to that later. And there is a whole process how you actually get your hands on this kind of data that takes a very long time. But yeah, so we gather it there, and the second type of source, which has been immensely helpful, and I would even say that when you start out in this kind of very regulated field, then this kind of open source data sets or open data sets, what you can find on the internet with proper licenses, obviously, are super helpful because you can start and, let's say, if you have some kind of concept about an AI you want to build, then you can do a quick proof of concept on some kind of like open data set, if something like that is available, of course.
Mm-hmm. So do you maybe have recommendations or best practices from that point of view?
Yeah, I think you should just Google. You will find cancer imaging archive in the US. And
this is how you started?
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. This is how we started that. We first started with open data to see if our concepts are even, like, how to say, technically feasible. And when we saw that, they are actually technically feasible, but we have a very limited, let's say, patient cohort that you wouldn't have to have like enough evidence there. based on the open data set, then you would obviously need to start digging for more data and for more data sources.
But BJ, do you agree with Preet, or do you have...
Yeah, I do. I think open data is a great way to start. I think the problem with going into production with open data sometimes is the lineage isn't there. You need to know where it was sourced from originally in order to make sure that it has the integrity of a good source of data. I think looking at hospitals and medical care, for example, you want to work with the hospital. You want to make sure it's come from the systems in the hospital and the patients within the hospital, and that you understand that lineage. We've worked with multiple organizations before where they've tried to synthesize data as well. So it's not real data, it's data that's based on the hypothesis they have, yeah. But synthetic data has a problem because it's based on your hypothesis, and if your hypothesis is wrong, then the data's not going to help you.
This is true, that, yeah, exactly. Then the third source is the synthetic data. I think when we talk about data sources, then in Estonia we are in, how do I put it, in a very privileged position.
We have the data already.
Yes, we have the data, and the thing is that data is centralized. We have two big systems which are part of the Estonian healthcare information system. One is like national PACS, meaning that you don't have images stored in one hospital, but all of the hospitals, everybody feeds them into one place. It's like a central storage with history since 2006. So you can imagine that over a population, there's a population cohort and a very long history. And I think Digilugu, which is basically National Electronic Health Record, started roughly 2012. So we have over 10 years of that as well, meaning that they're not connected though, which is really bad. And then sometimes to make the connections is like a lot of work. It's possible, but I mean that we are a little bit, in Estonia at least, in a privileged position because we do have something that you usually on a country level don't have. Okay, Singapore has it. I think Iceland also has it. And Liechtenstein, but you can see there is a common theme about the countries. They're not very big who have this kind of.
Well, actually, this is one question that came to my mind because I have heard several panels today talking about this. That in order to have a global innovative solutions, you cannot only stay within this one country's data. And I think with Estonia, we have kind of this issue that, yes, we have electronic healthcare data, but we cannot stick with it only if we want to make a globally innovative solution. Do you oppose or agree?
There are standards in most industries where you can work with those protocols and those standards. So PACS, for example, in health data, if you understand how PACS works, you can integrate into medical systems and pull out that medical data. So you can make it global technically. Where it's not global is regulatory. Yeah. That's where it becomes very painful. And we've deployed a solution in over 120 countries, and trying to navigate the regulations in 120 countries
and
is
how
quite painful.
Are you doing with this?
It's painful. We're live. We made it, but the US was the hardest, surprisingly. Not because it's got high regulations, it doesn't, but it has 50 states with 50 regulations rather than a federal regulation. So going into that country was a lot more difficult than going into Africa, for example, where they have a lower benchmark for regulations, and it was easier.
Yeah. And since you already mentioned regulation, then, and also you mentioned before the privacy, well, I guess those things come hand in hand. And do you see that...
Depends on the country.
but do you see that the privacy issue that is also very regulated, especially in the EU, is also affecting all this aspect, how the data can be used? Well, I know it does, but how do you see it in practice? What are your thoughts on that?
I think regulation, at least in Europe, for privacy is based on economic factors rather than real privacy. So it's not a human-centric problem, it's a sovereignty of data and where you monetize that data. That's where the regulations really come into effect. I think privacy is very important, but it's an ethical concern, not a regulatory concern, because regulation doesn't tackle it enough. And I know I'm probably at the wrong end of this scale for most people in startups who want lower regulations, but we do need better regulations for privacy. And there are solutions for making 100% privacy-based solutions that comply with all the innovation that we need and the economic benefits that we need.
So they exist already?
They exist. It's just, it's harder and more costly to implement. So we tend to go with a centralized route. And the problem with the centralized route is central data storage is expensive and it's not safe because you have a single target, and once that target is exposed, everybody's data is out in the public. And we've had it in Finland, for example, recently, where hundreds of thousands of records have been leaked because it's a single data source. So distributing the data source spreads the attack vector essentially and allows people to have better privacy options. I think also giving more control to consumers is important as well, and we don't do that enough. We don't give transparency to consumers, and we don't give the technical capabilities of consumers not only owning their data, but being able to take it between different providers and see full transparency. And there's plenty of excuses given for this. For example, patients shouldn't be able to see their medical records because they're hypochondriacs and they'll spend too much time looking at their own data. But none of them are real problems. Like the issue is technically we don't build solutions that are capable because they are expensive or they're technically hard.
Okay, but recently the European health data space regulation was adopted by the European Parliament, and well, this kind of little bit tackles this problem, like giving back the transparency to the patients and more control over the data. But at the same time, if I may be a little bit bold here, we are living in a society, and society as the main principle of a society is that we agree on certain rules, and if we want to gain something, then we need to give something, and I want to look at the privacy and the data also from this perspective, that if I will be willing to give my data for the cause of innovation, then my children, myself, maybe would benefit from it. Reet?
Yeah, I would start actually with something what you said, that I do think that also in the data space, and generally, let's say, because we are a medical device, let's say, generally regulatory space, regulation could be better, especially when you have new kinds of technology coming out, meaning that you might not want to subject an AI, which is purely data and software-based solution, in a way, ticking boxes, which kind of might apply to you, but mostly would go for a physical device. And then explain why they don't apply to you, because it's fucking obvious. Sorry. But so
Please put the beep on.
Yeah, I'm the F person, so I do tend to swear on the stage. I'm really sorry. The meaning that because I'm personally on more of the liberal spectrum, I would say better regulation is less regulation, meaning that we should regulate less. And I will bring you an example why this is important. It's important because when you take and want to build an AI, you can gather a data set and train the AI and like test it out and see how it works and maybe push it on the market. And if you have no regulatory burdens or whatever, you can do it with 6 months. In the healthcare space, you get the data, train, and I'm talking about from our own experience, it takes you at least a year, so twice as long. And then you need to regulate it, to put it on the market. And this takes you another 18 months. So we are talking about 2.5 years. So this is like 5 times longer cycle. So there is this quote or saying that Europe regulates, US innovates. You can see what happens if you have 2 startups. One can push something on the market, let's say, with half a year, and the other one takes 5 times longer. If you're having a boxing match, a boxer who is 5 times slower than their opponent, what happens to the boxer? And this is actually what is relevant, and why is that? What do we get? We as Europeans will get less innovation, or later.
And you play in the regulations, I understand.
Yeah, because it's harder to innovate, meaning that if you think about that, what do I as a person get? So I as a person, when I would give you my data, or anybody who wants to innovate, I will get innovation faster, quicker, meaning that if it's, for example, some kind of disease detection or some kind of something that would maybe make my life quality better, I will be waiting for this life quality to change longer, or maybe I can't wait and die before if I have a certain condition. So this is something what I see is that because of this kind of regulations, we will have less innovation in Europe. And this is the threat what I see, and the realistic threat. And we are competing today in Europe with US, we're competing with China, with Russia, and we know that they are getting ahead of us. And of course, we could most likely shouldn't compare to us to nations which are not very democratic at all, and where privacy doesn't exist, and really bad things are happening. And we all know what was how bad it was, because I'm born in Soviet Union, and this was horrible. But at the same time, we do and can compare ourselves to US, because this is a democratic place where innovation comes out faster.
Yeah, but maybe I a little bit want to oppose to you, because, for example, with the GDPR, I think this is your main obstacle, or MDR is your main obstacle.
I think MDR is our main obstacle.
But
with GDPR, I think Estonian law, actually national law, was very close to, in a way, protecting the data and issues. So I didn't see that GDPR made things much better.
But for example, with the GDPR, we see that the other countries in the world, they are taking it as a role model. And also, since AI and data, they are both the main topics, I would say, in Latitude as well, it's this governing opinion that AI Act is a really bad thing. And AI Act is, again, this, as you said, Europe regulates and US innovates. But at the same time, I think that the AI Act is actually deregulating. Because with the AI Act, well, of course, you're in different place because you're in the medical field, and this is high-risk AI. This is quite extensive. But in general, the AI Act, it makes the general rules, and they apply to all the EU member states. And what does it mean? It means that the member states themselves individually will not create new rules or different rules. So in essence, we have one rule box instead of 28. So what do you think about this idea?
Yeah, I think regulation is an opportunity to innovate, because I think if you look at any industry, regulation has put us in a much better position than we've ever been. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, when we had coal factories and we had people dying on mills, we don't have that because of regulation. We have safer medical treatment because of regulation. We have cars that don't
crash.
Well, they may crash, but we don't die in those crashes. They're safer because of regulation on how a car should be built. If we didn't have regulation, we'd have self-driving cars now, fully self-driving cars, that are causing accidents every day. Regulation has stopped that happening. So I think regulation is absolutely essential. I think MDR is a bit of a pain. It's probably a little bit heavy-handed. It doesn't understand AI, for example. It doesn't understand that because it was written before that, and when it's tried to apply it, it looks at it as a static idea. But I think regulation is absolutely essential to get things right, and GDPR is an opportunity there because we have a benchmark that the world has followed. Like, since it's been put in place, we have GDPR essentially everywhere in the world. And we have 448 million citizens in Europe to cater for. So if we want to build an economic powerhouse, we have 448 million citizens, and we have to comply with regulation to reach them. If a US company with only 330 million citizens wants to get access to our citizens, they have to meet our regulation compliance. So they still have to raise their game. And I think by us being there first, we can get into the US no problem. They're going to have the problem coming to Europe. And I think for us, that is a great position to be in.
Yeah, they may start in the US, but eventually they will come here.
Yeah.
But okay, changing the topic slightly.
I want to answer
Yes.
on this. And it's an interesting discussion because we're talking about one regulation versus 28. This is very logical, much better. But maybe we should talk about no regulation and this regulation. This is the difference.
So
here
you're in favor of no regulation
there, yeah.
in the field of what?
In the field of AI, because if you
Okay.
think about AI as a medical device or in the medicine field, MDR covers you already head to toe on risks and stuff. So it's like really, really hitting you hard. And if you need to add like some kind of layers on top, and I've seen that the topics like notified bodies need to have their own labs and capability to just look at through your test sets and stuff, like this will never happen. Meaning that the time to market will, like, or let's say, this might happen, but what does it mean for the time to market? It's crazy. So these kind of things I see are hitting the innovation bit hard. So this is like, let's say, my worries here. At the same time, I see that, look, we will be most likely the very first AI medical device in Estonia, and because it's so hard to get through MDR, this is actually one of the defensibility aspects, meaning that others who are not that serious, they don't get to the market because regulation.
But I have a question then, like, why did you choose first the healthcare sector and
Because I wanted to do good in the world.
Oh, that's good.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why did you choose EU?
This is a good thing. I can't move away. I'm separated. My kids live with my ex-wife, and they are like 2 weeks with me and 2 weeks with my ex-wife. Otherwise, I should be living in US. No kidding. That's it.
Okay.
I'm here because I'm bound through family ties, let's put it like this.
So your recommendation is to start from somewhere else?
If you start an AI in a medical device field, start in US. There is money there, like much more. Incentives are more on revenue versus efficiency. Regulation is easier and timelines predictable. You can make your stuff in US become really big, be on the market, be proven, and then you come and go through this hurdle of European regulation and come to this market. But this means that all of the patients who can benefit of your innovation will get it at least 5 years later in EU. That's it.
Well, luckily you have time to comply with the AI Act, so...
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that with the AI Act, I already see with our partners we're working together, where AI Act is not there yet. It's being like, it's coming.
It was adopted by the parliament on Tuesday, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you mean we don't have actually, we still have time to actually comply with it. So the thing is that, but you already see the fear in your partner saying, but what about the AI Act? And then they pull those handbrakes already now.
But don't you think the fear is sometimes larger than the actual reality?
Exactly. This is the thing, that the GDPR brought similar kind of fear, AI Act brings some similar kind of fear.
And then still here we are.
And exactly, still here we are, and then people are afraid and uneducated, and then you need to go and spend 2 months of every stakeholder educating them, saying, this is not that bad, this is how we comply, but this is 2 months lost.
Okay.
Again, speed and not speed. This is my only argument. At the same time, full disclosure, I like actually living in Europe. I like privacy. These are really good things, although maybe if somebody uses my picture somewhere, I don't really care. I'm more of a less personally privacy concerned person. But I do see why we, in a way, respect more human freedom, or this kind of human rights, because I would say human rights in European Union, the best place in the world compared to everything else. So this is the upper hand, obviously.
Yeah. Vijay, I wanted to ask from you, you mentioned ethics. Where do you see the ethics comes into play when it comes to data, AI, and creating global innovative solutions?
I think we all have a responsibility when building solutions these days to build them ethically. I think ethics are subjective, so we do have a problem there where we don't have a baseline for what is ethical and what is not ethical. But we still have a conscience, and we should be applying that to the work we're doing. And especially when you look at AI, I don't like to separate AI from software, because I think it's going to be so homogeneous and universal that it should just be software. We'll just get more adaptive and predictive and anticipatory software. But we should still be looking at software development as impactful in everything we do in our lives. Like it impacts everything we do. We should therefore be applying ethics into that, because it's impacting the work we do and the impact we have on other people. And if you say, for example, like you don't care if your picture's used for something, that's a subjective kind of situation.
Thing, yeah. It's my personal...
Yeah, and I think everybody has that. Everybody has this kind of, well, I don't care because in my life I'm happy if people see my data. I'm happy to be on social media. But that is subjective. You have to realize you, again, are in a society. You have an impact on the people around you in that society. And you should be looking at protecting the other people in that society that are more vulnerable than you. And if you look at, for example, domestic abuse cases where people are being stalked and abused, that's because their information is publicly available somewhere. So protecting those people, you may not be one of those, but you should want to protect those people in society. And that means you have to raise the bar. And that means having an ethical baseline as well in how you do things.
So it's not only the regulations, but also ethics, human rights that are keeping us here. But we have only 4 minutes. So 1 minute for you both to answer this question. Do you see that there are some kind of a trends or even future trends for tech companies when it comes to using data for the development of AI? So, Priit, 1 minute.
I would just put in this on the ethics thing, because when I hear word ethics, this usually somehow connected in my head already with ethics committee. If you don't know what it is, it's a legal, like, regulating, in a way, body who says that what can you get from the healthcare system data and what to use for, and I had to really explain, and this is the 6 months you need to go through to actually get access to the data. But I think it is important, because if we think about where does this ethics bit come from, is that there's a book which my co-founder gave me when we started the company, which is The Queen of All Maladies, which basically is a history of cancer. And it describes how cancer was treated throughout the history, and people had horrible, and I mean doctors with Hippocratic oath, had horrible methods of treating cancer with no scientific base whatsoever. They were in a way doing horrible things to patients which had no effect, or at least positive effect. Meaning that these kind of clinical trials and these kind of cancer drugs and things you do actually have come through these kind of big and horrible mistakes. Like traffic rules, these are written with deaths of drivers and passengers and people on the street. So I think that maybe we should start regulating things when something really bad happens, but not before. And we should, in a way, think that we, as a society, take certain risks.
Just to interrupt you, you know how the medical devices regulations came on board?
I think something like that.
Something really bad happened.
Exactly. So I think that if you think about the clinical trials are both for medical devices, drugs, but we also went through a clinical trial for medical device and proof. This all comes from this kind of something really bad happened. And this is good that we were regulated. So, but this, I think this kind of like consciousness, and are you developing something that you're happy with the results with, or when they're going to say no, is very much like a personal decision, isn't it? But yeah,
but BJ, your take on future trends?
I think the most important thing I've seen is the ability to train models without using data, or without access to data. And I think that's something that should be done more often using techniques like federated learning and homomorphic encryption. You can essentially give access to the model to use it for training, but that data does not go anywhere else. And we use it in medical spheres, for example. We send it to medical devices, and the device trains the model, and the model leaves the device, but the data never does. And we use it in popular devices, so iPhotos on Apple iPhone, that uses federated learning, so your photos never go to the server to learn whose faces are in those photos. The swipe keyboard on Android, that uses federated learning, so it learns your predictive text without sending your messages to Google. So we have that capability now to do that in every sphere, and we should be applying federated learning, and we are seeing more cases of that, but mostly we don't see it because added cost, and a lot of people don't really understand what it is. Yeah. But that is definitely going to come into...
The added cost is big, and I think the trend will be that Europe will be slower in innovation than US already is. So this divide will grow, and that's it. But federated learning, cool thing.
Okay, so we end with a positive note.
Yes.
I'm afraid we don't have time to take questions, but thank you, and have a great Latitude.
And thank you for moderating. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.